Do This When Love Is Gone: How to Let Go with Grace, a Buddhist Perspective. Have you ever felt your heart breaking as the one you love begins to drift away? Is this the end, or just another chapter in the endless cycle of life? In today's video, we're diving into one of the greatest secrets of love and loss, a lesson that not everyone is brave enough to face. You'll discover the early signs of fading love, and more importantly, how to accept the changes without letting them tear you apart. These are teachings that only Buddhist and Zen philosophies can offer, guiding us through the pain we often feel is unbearable. In the path of Zen and Buddhism, love is not something to possess or control, but rather something that flows through us like the waters of a river, constantly moving, changing, and transforming. It is not static or fixed. Love, like all things in life, is impermanent. This truth is one of the core teachings of Buddhism. Everything in life, from our thoughts to our relationships, is subject to change. And yet, it is through embracing this change that we find the deepest peace and wisdom. The experience of losing love can feel like an overwhelming storm, uprooting everything we have held dear. But in truth, the process of love fading is rarely violent or sudden. It is a quiet, almost imperceptible change. Like the gradual shifting of seasons, love begins to retreat slowly, at first without us even noticing. The person who once filled our world with warmth may start to withdraw their presence, and we might feel it in subtle ways. A change in tone, fewer moments shared, and silences that grow heavier between us. In Buddhist philosophy, the withdrawal of presence is not an act of malice or rejection. It is simply a manifestation of impermanence, a law of the universe that we are all bound by. The Buddha taught that everything, our feelings, our relationships, and even our very selves, are impermanent, and this includes love. When love begins to fade, it does not vanish abruptly. Instead, it recedes like the tide, revealing the shore that has always been beneath the surface. It is a process of change, not a betrayal. When someone we love begins to withhold their presence, the initial sensation can be difficult to understand. We may still see their body beside us, but their spirit, their energy, seems to have drifted away. This is not an intentional act of cruelty, but rather a silent reminder from life itself that love cannot be forced. It is the natural unfolding of a law that governs all things. What is born must eventually pass away. Even love, no matter how deep, is not exempt from this law. The Buddha often spoke of attachment as the root cause of suffering. Attachment occurs when we cling to things that are inherently impermanent, like the fleeting beauty of a flower or the warmth of a lover's embrace. We suffer not because love is lost, but because we try to hold on to it as though it were ours to keep forever. In truth, love is never something we can possess. It is a gift that flows through us, coming and going in its own time. The suffering we feel in the loss of love is not the loss itself, but our attachment to the idea that love should stay with us always. This is why it can feel so painful, because we are trying to grasp at something that is already moving away from us. In the teachings of the Buddha and Zen masters, we are urged not to chase after love when it begins to fade. We are reminded that trying to hold on to what is no longer there only prolongs our suffering. A well-known Zen story tells of a monk who, upon seeing a bird fly away from a tree, comments that love is like this bird. When it is comfortable, it lingers. It makes its home in our hearts. But when it begins to fade, it will quietly take its leave. In the same way, when love is no longer present, there is no need to chase after it. Doing so only causes more pain and anguish. In another Buddhist parable, a traveler comes to a wise monk, deeply troubled by the loss of a loved one. The monk teaches him that when love fades, it is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is simply a part of life's natural flow. The traveler, hearing this, begins to understand that it is not love that has been lost, but his attachment to it. And in that realization, he finds peace. When love fades, we also witness a transformation, not only of the relationship, but of the person themselves. The Buddha's teachings remind us that we are all in a constant state of flux. Our hearts and minds are never fixed. They are always changing, evolving, and growing. When love withdraws, it is often because the person who once loved us has shifted in their own path. They have transformed into someone else, just as we too are always evolving. This transformation can be painful to witness. The person who once shared their heart so openly may now seem distant, their words less meaningful, their presence more like that of a stranger. But this change is not an act of betrayal. It is simply the result of love's natural ebb and flow. Like the leaves falling from a tree in autumn, the transformation is a part of the cycle of life. We cannot hold on to the leaves when they fall, nor can we hold on to the person who has changed. The love they once felt has transformed into something else, and so too must we let go. In Buddhist wisdom, this transformation is not to be feared or resisted. It is simply the process of life unfolding. The Zen teachings encourage us to accept the changes in ourselves and others, to bow to them with humility and gratitude, and to recognize that love, in all its forms, is a mirror reflecting back our own growth. We are not losing love, but gaining wisdom through the impermanence of it. One of the most profound teachings of Zen and Buddhism is the importance of letting go. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we try to hold on to things that are impermanent. This includes not only physical possessions, but also relationships, emotions, and attachments. To cling to love when it is fading is to hold on to a fire that is already burning out. In doing so, we only burn ourselves with the pain of attachment. The key to finding peace in the face of love's fading is to let go. This does not mean abandoning love or forgetting the joy it once brought. Instead, it means accepting that love is a transient experience, just like everything else in life. When we let go of the need to possess or control love, we free ourselves from the suffering of its impermanence. We bow to love with gratitude for the time it has shared with us, and then we allow it to pass, as all things must. As we walk the path of life, we are reminded time and again that love, like all things, is meant to be lived, not possessed. The great Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh often spoke of love as a practice, not a possession. Love is something we give freely, without expectation, without the desire to hold on to it forever. It is like a river that flows through us, nourishing and transforming us, but never something we can own. To live with love is to accept its fleeting nature and to honor it while it is with us. This means embracing love's impermanence with an open heart, understanding that it is a part of life's great dance. When love fades, we do not mourn its departure as a loss. Instead, we bow to it with gratitude, knowing that it has transformed us in ways we may not even understand yet. Love has not vanished, it has simply moved on to another form, just as we too will continue to grow and change. Through this understanding, we find peace. In letting go, we find freedom. And in that freedom, we discover that love, in all its many forms, is always with us. It is not something we can lose, because it is not something we ever truly possessed. It is simply something we have lived, and in living it, we are forever changed. The fading of love, though a painful experience, often brings with it a deeper understanding of the transitory nature of relationships. One of the most poignant aspects of this transformation is the change in the person who once loved you. It is as if the very essence of their being shifts, and the person you once knew no longer responds to you in the same way. Their laughter, which once filled your world, seems distant. Their touch no longer brings the same comfort. The love that once seemed endless now feels like a fading memory. In its place, the person you loved becomes someone else entirely. This shift can be deeply disorienting and heart-wrenching, as it feels like you are mourning not just the end of a relationship, but the very person they once were. The person who once cherished you, shared dreams with you, and stood by your side in times of need now seems unrecognizable. It is as though a part of them has vanished, and you are left to grapple with this new version of them, one that no longer holds the same warmth or affection for you. In this moment, the pain of loss feels compounded, because it seems that you have not just lost love, but the essence of the person you once knew. Yet, in Buddhist thought, this transformation is not something to fear or resist. Rather, it is a natural and inevitable part of life's flow. Everything, including love, is subject to change. As the Buddha taught, all things are impermanent. This includes the people we love, the feelings we share, and even our very selves. The changes that occur when love fades are not signs of betrayal, but rather expressions of the impermanence of existence. Love, in its purest form, is not something we can own or control. It is like the wind that flows freely, touching everything in its path, but never staying in one place for too long. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh often speaks of love as a practice of mindfulness, one that is not rooted in attachment or possession. Love that is allowed to flow freely, without clinging, can continue to bring beauty and joy, even as it changes shape. When love begins to fade, it is not the end of love itself, but a transformation of it. Just as a tree sheds its leaves in the autumn to prepare for new growth, relationships too must evolve and change. This is the very nature of life. In this sense, the person you once knew is not gone forever. They have simply evolved into someone new, as you too are constantly evolving. In the face of such a transformation, one of the greatest lessons we can learn is the art of letting go. The Zen monk, in his quiet wisdom, teaches that we should not chase after love once it has begun to fade, just as we would not chase a bird that has flown away or desperately try to catch the last leaves of autumn as they fall from the trees. The act of chasing after something that has already left is futile and painful, and it only prolongs our suffering. Instead, we're called to honor the passage of love. Letting go is not a sign of weakness or defeat, but an act of deep wisdom. The Zen monk reminds us that when love withdraws, do not run after it. Honor its passage, for love that is forced to stay is no longer love. It is a prisoner in the heart's cage. To cling to love when it no longer exists in its original form is to imprison it, to deny its natural course. Love cannot be forced to remain when it is ready to move on. Just as a bird must fly away when its time has come, or the leaves must fall when the season changes, love too must be allowed to flow in its own time. This teaching is rooted in the core Buddhist concept of anatta, or non-self. We are not the possessors of love, we are but vessels through which love flows. When we cling to love, we create an illusion of permanence where none exists. Love is not something to possess or hold on to. It is something to live fully while it is present, and then to let go of when its time has passed. This is the true meaning of freedom, the ability to love without attachment, to give without expecting, and to release without regret. The process of letting go is never easy, and it often feels like we are giving up something that is central to our happiness. But in reality, it is only through letting go that we can find true peace. When we stop trying to hold on to love that is no longer there, we free ourselves from the burden of attachment. We allow ourselves to move forward, to open our hearts to new experiences, and to embrace the impermanence of all things. In the Buddhist tradition, we are taught that suffering arises from attachment, our desire to hold on to things that are fleeting. The key to alleviating suffering is to understand that everything is impermanent, and that love, like all things, must eventually change or depart. When we release our attachment to love, we no longer experience it as a loss, but as a natural and beautiful transformation. We learn to embrace love as it comes, without fear of its eventual departure, and in doing so, we find freedom from suffering. Letting go of love is not about abandoning it, but about embracing its true nature. Just as a flower blooms and withers, love too has its seasons. We must learn to honor love's arrival and its departure, without clinging to either. When we accept that love, like all things, is impermanent, we can find beauty in its fleeting nature. We can appreciate it for what it was and be grateful for the lessons it has taught us. In this way, we can live with love without holding on to it, allowing it to flow freely through us without the need to possess or control it. There is great wisdom in this practice of letting go, and it is a central tenet of the Buddhist path. When we let go of love, we make space for new experiences, new relationships, and new ways of being. We open ourselves to the richness of life, knowing that each moment is precious, not because it lasts forever, but because it is part of the ever-changing dance of existence. In this way, letting go becomes not a painful loss, but a joyous acceptance of life's impermanence. It is a recognition that love is not a thing to be held or possessed, but a force that flows through us, shaping us, teaching us, and ultimately freeing us. By letting go, we honor the love that once was, and we make room for the love that is yet to come. Acceptance, from a Buddhist perspective, is a profound and active choice that demands our conscious attention and a deep inner resolve. It is not a passive resignation to life's circumstances, nor a retreat into apathy, but rather a courageous act of letting go. letting go of the need to control, of the impulse to hold tightly to what is slipping away, and of the expectation that we can preserve things that are inherently impermanent. Acceptance is a transformative force that enables us to find peace within the inevitable flow of life. In Zen teachings, one of the core causes of suffering is not the loss itself, but our attachment to that which is lost. It is our clinging to the past, to what we think we must hold on to, that creates the suffering. This attachment prevents us from fully embracing the present moment, and thus prevents from experiencing peace. The Buddha's teachings emphasize that suffering arises from craving and attachment, our desire to possess, to hold, and to control. We are taught that love, like all things, is not a possession, but a force that moves through us. When we cling to love as something to be owned, we distort its true nature, and we set ourselves up for sorrow. This is where the wisdom of acceptance enters. When we learn to let go of our attachment to love, to relationships, or to any other impermanent thing, we shift our perspective. We stop mourning what is past and start celebrating the beauty of what once was. In doing so, we transform our relationship with loss, seeing it not as an end, but as a natural part of the cycle of life. Love does not die when it leaves us, it simply changes form. It transforms into a lesson, a memory, or perhaps a deeper understanding of ourselves and our capacity to love. Consider the story of a traveler seeking wisdom from a wise monk. This traveler, deeply troubled by the loss of love, asked the monk how to bear the pain of parting. The monk, with his calm presence, took the traveler to a river and spoke. This river, like love, flows without end. It never clings to the banks, never stays in one place. It moves forward, and as it does, it touches everything, transforms everything, and leaves nothing unchanged. And yet, it never looks back. The traveler, watching the river flow, realized that love is much like this river. It does not remain in the same form. It cannot be confined or controlled. It flows through us, changes us, and moves on when the time is right. This moment of realization was the traveler's awakening. He understood that love was never his to hold on to. It was not a possession, not a thing to cling to, but a force that flows through him, teaching him, changing him, shaping him into a wiser, more compassionate person. The love he had once shared with another was not gone. It had simply transformed into something else. It had become part of his journey, woven into the fabric of his being, shaping his understanding of life and his place within it. This is the essence of acceptance, recognizing that love, like all things, is impermanent. It is not ours to own or control. It is something we live through, something that shapes us as we move through life. The moment we stop trying to cling to it, we free ourselves from the suffering that comes from attachment. We learn to see love as it truly is, a transient force, a guest that enters our hearts for a time and then departs when its time is done. The teachings of the Buddha encourage us to practice mindfulness and presence, to be fully aware of love when it is with us, and to honor its passage when it leaves. Acceptance is not about resignation, but about embracing life as it is, in all its beauty and impermanence. It is about releasing our attachment to fixed ideas of how things should be and allowing life to unfold in its own natural rhythm. Through acceptance, we find peace. We cease to resist the flow of life and instead become part of it. We begin to see that loss is not the absence of love, but a transformation of it. Love, like all things, is not meant to last forever in the same form. It is meant to be experienced, to teach us, and to shape us. When we accept that love is impermanent, we stop searching for it outside of ourselves, and we begin to recognize that love was always within us, flowing through us, guiding us toward greater understanding and compassion. In the end, acceptance of love's impermanence opens the door to true peace. We no longer cling to what is passing, but rather allow it to flow freely, knowing that each experience, each moment of love, leaves behind a gift, a lesson, a memory, or a deeper understanding of who we are and who we are becoming. And in that, we find freedom. The freedom to love without attachment, the freedom to live without fear, and the freedom to accept life as it is, in all its beauty, suffering, and transformation. The deepest and most transformative lesson that arises from the fading of love is the realization that love is not something to possess. It is not a commodity, nor is it something we can keep within our grasp for eternity. Love is a guest, a visitor in our lives. one that arrives unexpectedly and departs when its time is through. Just as we do not possess the beauty of the sunrise or the flow of the river, we do not possess love. It is given to us, it touches us, and it changes us. But it is never ours to hold on to forever. In the Buddhist tradition, we are taught that attachment is the root of suffering. When we cling to things, whether it is a person, a relationship, or an ideal, we bind ourselves to the illusion that these things can be controlled, that they can remain unchanged. But all things are impermanent. The Buddha spoke of the law of anicca, impermanence, which teaches that nothing in this world is fixed, not even love. It flows through us like a river, and just as rivers carve paths through the land, love leaves traces in our hearts. But these traces are not meant to be permanent. Love is not a possession, it is a gift that passes through us. There is an ancient Zen story that offers wisdom on this point. A monk once asked his teacher, "Master, what is love?" The teacher replied, "Love is like a bird flying by your window. It may rest for a moment, but it does not stay. It comes and goes, and all you can do is be thankful for the moment it shared with you." The monk, contemplating these words, understood that love, like the bird, does not belong to us. It simply visits, and we must let it go when its time is over. This is where we begin to find peace in the midst of loss. Love's departure does not erase its value, nor does it leave us empty. Instead, it is an invitation to let go of the need to possess it. We can grieve, yes, but through grief comes the wisdom of acceptance, the understanding that all things in life, including love, are impermanent. The loss of love, though painful, is not a tragedy, but a natural unfolding of life. It is simply the ebb and flow of existence. The weight of loss does not vanish entirely, but it becomes lighter when we recognize its true nature. We cease to mourn love as something that was ours to keep, and instead, we embrace its impermanence with gratitude. In Buddhist practice, we are encouraged to live fully in each moment, without attachment, without expectation. Love, like all experiences, is meant to be lived, not clung to. The moment we stop trying to hold on to it, we begin to experience its true beauty. We learn to cherish love as it is. When it is present, we give it our full attention. When it leaves, we bow in gratitude for the time it spent with us. The journey of the traveler, the one who has learned that love is a guest, does not end with the loss of love. His path continues, but now he walks it with a lighter heart. Each step is no longer burdened by the desire to control or possess love. Each breath is deeper, filled with a quiet understanding that love, in all its forms, is a teacher. The traveler has not lost love, but has learned to live with it in all its manifestations. Whether love appears as a fleeting moment of connection or as a lasting bond, the traveler now understands that love is not a static thing. It is a living, breathing force that moves through him, shaping him, teaching him to be more compassionate, more present, and more accepting. This wisdom of impermanence brings peace because it frees us from the illusion that we can hold on to love or that we must cling to it in order to feel complete. In letting go of the need to possess love, we create the space to truly experience it. And in this space, we find freedom, not only from suffering, but from the anxiety that comes from trying to control what is inherently uncontrollable. In the final analysis, the wisdom of impermanence teaches us that love is not a possession, but a visitor. It comes into our lives, touches us, and leaves us forever changed. Our job is not to hold on to it, but to accept its fleeting nature and to live with it fully while it is here. Through this practice of acceptance, we find peace. We learn that love's true beauty lies in its impermanence, and in this realization, we discover the depth of our own capacity to love and to let go. In the core teachings of Buddhism, one of the most profound realizations we can come to is the understanding that everything in life is impermanent. This includes our emotions, our relationships, and, yes, love itself. The Buddha's wisdom on impermanence, anicca, reminds us that no experience, no matter how joyful or painful, lasts forever. This truth is not something to be feared, but rather something to be embraced. For in embracing it, we release ourselves from the suffering that comes from clinging to what we cannot keep. Impermanence, the universal truth. At the heart of Buddhist thought is the truth that all things are subject to change. This is true for everything we encounter in our lives, our thoughts, our feelings, and especially our relationships. Love, which we often think of as eternal and unchanging, is no different. We often hold on to love as if it were something we could own, something we could possess forever. But in the Buddha's teachings, we are reminded that love is just as fleeting as the seasons, just as impermanent as the rising and setting of the sun. We cannot hold on to love any more than we can hold on to the waves of the ocean. Love, like all things, will come and go. When we experience the fading of love, we are confronted with a truth that challenges our deepest attachments, the realization that love is not ours to possess. It comes to us, it touches us, and then it moves on. The pain we feel when love slips away is not the loss itself, but the attachment we have formed to it. This attachment blinds us to the truth of impermanence and locks us in a cycle of suffering. In Buddhism, suffering arises not from the things that change, but from our inability to accept the fact that they will change. Withdrawal of presence, the first sign of love fading. One of the most subtle signs that love is beginning to fade is the withdrawal of presence. This is not always an immediate or dramatic event. It can start as a quiet withdrawal, fewer words exchanged, less time spent together, and a growing emotional distance. The person who once filled your life with warmth and attention now seems preoccupied or distant. You may still see them physically, but their presence no longer carries the same weight or depth. It is as though something is missing, even if they are still there. This withdrawal is a natural part of the impermanence of relationships. When love fades, it often does so gradually, like the changing of the seasons. The Buddha taught that the nature of attachment is such that when it begins to loosen, we may feel confusion and anxiety. We try to hold on, to fight against the withdrawal, but this resistance only deepens our suffering. Instead, the teachings invite us to recognize that this subtle withdrawal is simply the manifestation of the impermanent nature of love. It is not a betrayal, but rather a gentle reminder that all things, even love, are in a constant state of flux. Transformation, the second sign. The second sign of love's fading is more pronounced. The transformation of the person you once knew into someone else. This shift can be deeply painful, as it often feels like the person you loved has become unrecognizable. Their laughter no longer resonates with you, their words no longer bring comfort, and their touch no longer holds the same meaning. It is as if the very essence of the person has changed. In Buddhist thought, this transformation is an inevitable part of the impermanence of relationships. Just as we grow and change throughout our lives, so too does the person we love. The Buddha taught that love, like everything else, is subject to the forces of change. When someone no longer loves you as they once did, it is not necessarily because they have intentionally changed or because they have ceased to care. Rather, it is the result of the natural unfolding of life, a process of transformation that occurs in both hearts and minds. To grieve this transformation is natural. But like all forms of grief, it is essential to recognize that this change is not something to resist. It is part of life's flow. Love, when it fades, does not vanish entirely. It simply transforms into a different form. The person you once knew may not be the same, but the love that you shared has become a part of you. It lives on in the memories, in the lessons, and in the growth it has inspired in you. Letting go, the key to peace. The path to peace when love fades is through letting go. This is not a sign of weakness or defeat, but rather a demonstration of wisdom. The Zen teachings speak clearly on this point. When love withdraws, do not chase after it. Honor its passage, for love that is forced to stay is no longer love. It is a prisoner in the heart's cage. Letting go of love does not mean abandoning it or forgetting it. It simply means accepting that it is not ours to possess. Letting go is an act of surrender, not to the absence of love, but to the truth of its impermanence. The Buddha taught that attachment to love, like attachment to anything, leads to suffering. When we cling to love, we make it something to be kept, something to control. But in doing so, we prevent ourselves from experiencing the full beauty of love's natural flow. Love that is free, that is allowed to come and go, is love in its truest form. By letting go, we open ourselves to the possibility of peace. We release the need to hold on to what is no longer present, and instead learn to embrace the space it has left behind. This space is not empty. It is filled with the potential for new experiences, new relationships, and deeper self-love. Self-love, the foundation of peace. In the absence of another's love, it is essential to turn inward and offer presence to yourself. Self-love is not an indulgent or selfish love. It is the deep recognition that you are whole, that you are enough, even without the love of another. The Buddha spoke of the importance of self-compassion, of understanding that we are worthy of love not because of what others give us, but because of the love we cultivate within ourselves. In moments of loss, we must learn to show ourselves the same kindness, patience, and understanding that we would offer to a loved one. Self-love is the foundation that allows us to move through the pain of love's impermanence without losing ourselves. By loving ourselves, we gain the strength to let go of attachment and to accept life as it is. We realize that love is not something that completes us, but something that flows through us, teaching us, changing us, and helping us grow. Gratitude and acceptance, the wisdom of letting go. At the heart of Buddhist wisdom is the practice of gratitude. In times of loss, we are encouraged not to mourn what is gone, but to honor the love that was. We are taught to bow in gratitude for the love that once filled our lives and to let it go with grace. This is not a sign of giving up, but a sign of acceptance. Gratitude transforms the pain of loss into the wisdom of impermanence. We understand that love, like all things, has a natural course. It comes, it teaches us, it transforms us, and then it moves on. By embracing this flow, we free ourselves from the burden of attachment and allow ourselves to heal. The wisdom found in the teachings of Buddhism offers a path to peace amidst the heartache of love's impermanence. By accepting the natural ebb and flow of love, we stop resisting its departure and instead embrace its passage with gratitude and grace. The pain of loss, though real, is softened when we realize that love is not something to hold on to, but something to live with and let go of when its time is through. Through letting go, we heal, and through healing, we find a deeper, more lasting peace. After all the invaluable insights we've shared today, you can feel that love is not something to possess, but a temporary guest in our lives. Accepting change is the key to not only overcoming pain, but growing stronger. If you found these lessons meaningful and valuable, don't forget to leave a comment, like this video, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any helpful content in the future. Share this video with the people you care about so we can all learn and grow together through every challenge life throws at us. Remember, love always has a way of returning to us, but only when we're ready to let go and accept the truth that everything is impermanent. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.